What's the deal with Paul? What a fantastic question. Many progressives have a tough time with Paul, and I get that because I did too for a long time. But let me share some information with you which might help. The most important thing to note is that several of the letters in the New Testament which are ascribed to Paul weren't actually written by him. Scholars say the only letters we're certain Paul wrote are Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Philippians, 1st Thessalonians, and Philemon. The rest are either Deuteropauline epistles, which means that he may or may not have written them, but probably didn't, or Pseudo-Pauline epistles, which he did not write. Later authors scribed these and simply signed his name, which was a common practice in the ancient world. Much of the troubling theology that we get, especially about oppression of women, came from these later writings. What's more, many scholars think that the troubling language about women in 1st and 2nd Corinthians are interpolations, later additions by editors who shared the theology of the Pseudo-Pauline epistles. Doesn't that change the way we think about Paul and his writings? Another important thing to keep in mind is that we are literally reading someone else's mail when we're reading Paul's letters. He was writing to people at churches that he founded for the most part and with whom he had existing relationships. He also often felt like they had fallen short, and he had a bit of a sharp tongue, which colored his letters. Paul also never claimed to have met Jesus. We know that he didn't. There's a story in the book of Acts where we see him encountering the resurrected Jesus, but that was likely invented by the author of Acts and not historical. That means that Jesus' theology and Paul's theology likely were different. But I do think that Paul is more progressive than we typically give him credit for. He talked about radical inclusion and everyone being equal in the body of Christ. So I would recommend reading either Eric C. Smith's book, Paul the Progressive, or Marcus Borg and John Dominic Crossan's book, The First Paul. And then keep all this in mind and read Paul again and see if you still have the same experience of Paul's writings.